Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Now that my two Q&As are done for the day, it's time for me to talk a little bit about current events in the community. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about something. And I was reminded of this the other day when someone sent me a screenshot that a fellow I know by the name of David, actually a pretty good guy. I don't know him in person, I only know him online, but I've known him online for a few years actually. He had posted on Jerry Ward's wall some stuff about coming off all his gear, going just on TRT, having lost all of his gains, and Jerry Ward chimed in and said, that always happens. There's no way for you to keep your gains when you come off of a blast. It just can't be done. This gets talked about a lot, and I used to agree to some extent with that, but quite frankly, I don't like that message. And I don't think it's entirely true, and the reason I don't like that message is that it encourages a lot of young guys to stay on heavier amounts of gear than they really should be doing for prolonged periods of time. And it's because it's that fear of loss, that fear of losing their muscle mass, their fear of losing their gains. And I need to really talk to both sets of people in this audience, and I try to. Obviously, the majority of people who lift are going to stay natty, or if they're going to go in gear, they're going to go in a little while and they're going to come off. But there's going to be a good chunk of people who are serious about their gear use. They do go in hefty amounts. It's extremely common these days. Extremely common. Millions and millions of people do this. And so it's not fair for me to not address both groups. And I really want to talk to the guys who've gone on gear. And I'm not encouraging anyone to do this. I'm talking to the guys who already jumped on a bunch. Maybe they regret the amounts they used. Maybe they're concerned about their health. They're concerned about the legal consequences potentially. And they're like, look, I want to come off of all of this, but I'm scared of losing everything. And I want to talk about that a bit because the truth is, people don't always know what to do. They did keep up a little bit. I admitted to certain things in the UK where things were legal, where you could legally have user amounts on hand. It was perfectly legal in the UK. And in fact, I knew someone who the police had confiscated all of his stuff, and his lawyer wrote them a letter demanding that they give it all back because it was user amounts. The police returned it all to him. So laws are a little bit different there. But the difference is I came back to Texas, and one decision for me was obviously the fact that I was getting older. The fact that I was getting older. 40 years old now. Heart disease runs in my family. I can't run around blasting a ton of gear. I can't. It's just not an option for me. For health reasons. Number two, I live in Texas now. All right, UK and Texas are two completely different worlds. Completely different worlds. Like I said, you heard the event, what happened there in the UK. Texas has to a lot of people some laws that aren't going to make any sense. We are very, very loose on our use of force laws and self-defense laws here. There are situations in Texas where you can legally kill people who are not a direct danger to you. They don't always have to be a direct danger to you, provable. They only have to be sometimes in the wrong place doing the wrong thing. All right, I'm not going to get into all those laws, but Texas is very, very loose use of force laws. You can kill people in Texas to protect property and livestock, okay, in certain situations. Anyone who's become a physical threat to you, and you can prove it, not a jury in Texas is going to convict you if you kill them. It's a totally different world here. But don't put any drugs in your body. Do not put drugs in your body in Texas. They come down on you pretty hard for certain things. And in the case of anabolics, the amount that most serious powerlifters or serious bodybuilders have on hand would be considered dealer amounts, okay? People who are doing really serious blasts, that's dealer amounts. Dealer amounts in Texas of these substances can get you a longer prison sentence than murder does in a lot of the places where you guys are listening. Some of the countries you guys are listening in, you get less years in prison for murder than Texas does for dealer amounts of anabolics. Now, murder here, you get executed. This is a death penalty place. But needless to say, laws are really strict here. All right. I do not want to have the sort of quantities of gear ever on hand while living in Texas that could get me into that sort of trouble. It's simply not worth it. So for me, I quit blasting a really long time ago, and it's multifold in nature. My health, my fitness, the laws where I live. You don't want to bring that sort of trouble down on yourself. Where I live, it is simply not worth it. I don't care how much you love your muscle mass. My opinion, it's not worth it to have big quantities of this sort of stuff in your possession. It's not going to go well for you. If anything happens where the police find it or something, or a warrant gets issued, it is going to go terrible for you here. It's simply not worth it. This isn't the United Kingdom. So that being said, yeah, I came off of the heavy blast a long time ago. And the thing is, I've seen even Jerry Ward has got up and said, you know what? Jason's still carrying the same size, lifting the same heavy weights that he was lifting in the UK blasting a gram a test. Yeah, I am. I actually am. I am just as strong. In fact, I was on nothing but TRT amounts, the amount your doctor could prescribe for you legally, and there are a lot of doctors prescribing TRT and anabolics in Houston, Dallas, Austin, all of that in Texas. There are a bunch of doctors doing it. And that's legal because you're illegal at that point. You're not breaking laws. But yeah, you know what? I was doing that when I deadlifted 500 pounds back in December. Yeah, 500 pounds for 7 reps, beltless, no grinders. Yeah, it's on TRT amounts. Now, can I prove that? No, I can't prove that. Just like anyone who tells you they don't use gear, they can't prove it. People can look at that and say, Jason, you're lying. I don't believe you. And you know what? That's your right, because I can't prove that to you. All I can tell you is that that's a reality. All right? And here's the thing, because I'm going to go somewhere with this. The reality is, if you train smart and you do things right, all of you younger guys who've been blasting a ton of gear, it is possible for you to come off. And that's my message in saying that. And if I'm lying and you try to do this same thing, it's not going to work. So then you guys can call me out on it later. You can show all your muscle mass loss and say, Jason, you're full of crap. You're a big fat liar, and I can prove it. Because it's the people accuse me of lying all the time, but they can't prove I'm lying. And it's really weird. Like, I've never seen anyone actually prove, even though they claim they prove I've lied about this or that. And it's insane. They don't actually have proof. This would be a way to actually prove it for some of you guys out there. And here's where I'm going with this. What I've noted, there's a lot of research out there showing that there are permanent structural changes in muscle tissue from people who use gear for prolonged periods of time. There are permanent changes. We have multiple studies on this. They can do a muscle biopsy of your muscles and tell if you used a bunch of gear or not. That's how pronounced it is. In fact, we've seen studies to where they did muscle biopsies on people 2 or 3 years after they came off of a ton of gear, who are heavy users, right? 2 or 3 years later, they could pull muscle biopsies and still tell that they had been heavy abusers. Okay? That's how pronounced it is. There are permanent structural changes. I would suggest that those permanent structural changes make muscle tissue sensitive to testosterone and androgens indefinitely. I believe that theory. I do believe that theory. The reason what happens, too many guys go straight off and they try TRT protocols that don't work, oftentimes using black market drugs, not TRT, but PCT protocols, and they don't work. Something goes wrong. They don't get their test levels back normal. All right, that's one factor. The other factor is they don't know how to train properly. They never built a base correctly, and they relied upon the drugs purely to gain their size. So Jerry Ward's a perfect example. That's why this happens to him. He actually doesn't know how to train. Watch him train. That's why he shrinks so much when he comes off, because he's relied purely upon the gear. What I would suggest to you is that if you guys focus on your training, adjust for your maximum recoverable volume, because when you're on gear, you can train with a lot more volume. You can train with a lot more volume. You guys remember, I used to do, off season in the UK, I would be doing 30 sets of bench press, 30 sets of squats a week, 30 sets of rows. You guys remember that? I would do it on camera. Like, I videoed them 1 week for the entire week on the days, and I actually did 30 moderately heavy sets of all those exercises in a single week on camera. All right? You can't do that anymore. That has to go away. Your maximum recoverable volume is going to be lower. You have to learn to work within the confines of that, but you have to still train heavy. You have to maintain your neuromuscular efficiency. That means full range of motion training, pause work, explosive movements, movements that force you to recruit muscle fibers very, very fast. So that means your bench presses, you pause on the chest, you do deadlifts off the floor, maybe deficit deadlifts, pause squats, heavy pause work, big full body movements, exercises that will force you to recruit muscle fibers, upper threshold fibers very, very quickly. Because if you can maintain your neuromuscular efficiency, you can maintain the leverages necessary on those muscles to force your body to hold on to it. Because that's going to be a real big deal. Your body doesn't keep muscle mass that it doesn't have to. Once the androgens are out of the system, you have to have sufficient training stimulus that tells your body you have to maintain that muscle mass. And that means you can't go to a bunch of lightweight. You can't go to a bunch of lightweight. All right? It's not an option. You have to force your body to maintain it, and that means being as strong as possible. If you lose strength and you allow your strength to go down because your training isn't focused upon it, you're not going to be able to maintain the mechanical tension necessary on your muscles to maintain the size once your hormone levels have come down into the normal range. And what people need to understand, if you go on TRT, you go to a doctor, because most of you guys who've been blasted in gear, you'll probably qualify medically. Your levels are going to be suppressed. You will be able to find a doctor who will help you. Okay, legally, your insurance might even cover it. You're not going to get in trouble for this because you're working within the confines of the law. And then you've got a doctor who can maintain your health for you. So what you're going to find is that we know that TRT gives a muscle growth advantage over clean people. We have studies on this. We know people on TRT gain muscle at 50% faster of a rate lifting weights than people who just lift weights, okay, who are at similar hormone levels. There's theories as to why, but that's the case. Now you combine that with the fact that your muscle tissue is going to be more sensitive to androgens due to the change in muscle cell nuclei, which again has been noted in muscle biopsies and studies. If you can maintain the tension on the muscles by being able to use heavy enough weights through full ranges of motion, I honestly believe once your hormones are stabilized, you'll be able to hold on to the muscle. The other thing I found, I had to eat a lot of food. It prevented me from getting particularly lean because that's the one thing I noticed. As soon as I would start to lose weight, my strength would start to go down. So I'd have to start eating again. And there's a little bit of a panic there. And part of that is your body has to get normalized and used to that muscle. That's the other thing. If you're going to come off, you're not going to be able to go straight to cutting, straight to dieting. You're going to need to get your body used to maintaining the muscle and the strength that you have for a long enough period of time that you reach a state of homeostasis. And what I've done recently, I worked for a little while on getting stronger, regaining strength, getting to a nice peak strength, and I'm good and strong and happy with my strength again. And then I started slowly cutting, which is what I've been doing. And what I found, now that my body has gotten used to it, it's had a very, very long period of time of being in the normal hormone range. It's had a very long time of maintaining a high body weight, of maintaining a certain amount of muscle mass, because I am bigger than I should be natural. And anyone who doesn't understand that hasn't really assessed my measurements. You guys are thinking I'm like 40% body fat and stuff. Plug my numbers in at body fat, you know I really have. I don't have a gut, a flat stomach. I'm sitting at 238 at 5'9". So I'm obviously not over 30% body fat. So plug my numbers in, it shouldn't be hard to figure out. I'm well above the natty limit. But I've gotten used to that. I've gotten used to maintaining that. My body is now comfortable with that amount of size. What I found now that I've cut and lost 12 pounds by doing a large amount of extra cardio and cutting my food, cleaning my diet up slowly, adding in a large amounts of cardio, I found that I've dropped 12 pounds while maintaining 100% of my strength. I haven't lost a single drop of strength at all. Over the course of the last 6 weeks, dropping about 12 pounds. Again, largely due to adding in a lot more physical activity, a lot more cardio. So again, that's the other trick to it for a lot of you guys who want to come off. If you're going to want to keep your size, you're going to have to keep eating for a while. You might even gain a little body fat. You're going to have to focus on strength so that you can maintain tension on the muscles. You're going to have to force your body to hold on to that muscle mass with keeping enough weight on the bar, focusing on strength for a while. Focusing on strength because remember, you need that strength. You can't use pure metabolic fatigue with a light weight to maintain muscle mass that your body doesn't want to have, that it knows it's not supposed to have when those hormone levels come down. And in my experience, and I've observed this in other people over the years, it's not just me, that if you can get your body to that point, you will probably be able to maintain your size, and then you'll eventually be able to cut and do other stuff once your body's used to it. But it's going to let you keep the size that you have. Now, if you got to IFBB Pro size, those guys don't keep that sort of size. But what you will notice, how many of those pro guys, when they turn no longer pro anymore, they're still bigger than natties. I mean, Jay Cutler, for example, he's not massive anymore. But these guys are all on TRT and stuff afterwards. But Jay Cutler is still bigger than any real natty you know. Anyone who's his size, who's claiming natty, they're lying. He's still really big. He's not pro bodybuilder big, but he's still big. He's been able to maintain that size. So I would suggest to you guys that if you're smart and you're willing to do things right, that you guys can come off all of this gear. You can go on TRT and you will be able to hold on to that size. It isn't going to be perfect. You're not going to always like it, but it's sure going to be a hell of a lot better for your health. And I think it's possible, and I'm working on doing that right now. I'm working on showing that it can be done. And hopefully I can convince some of you other guys out there who've been blasting a ton of gear to go ahead and reel it in and realize that it is possible to keep at least the vast majority of those gains you've made from what you're doing if you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to do it right. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.